The alarm screamed across Hadrian IV as the sky turned to fire. Plasma bolts rained down, shattering buildings, turning the colony into a graveyard of twisted steel and scorched earth. The Xiphos' dominion had come, and they weren't here to negotiate. Their message echoed through every emergency channel, their guttural voices filled with arrogance. Surrender, and we will spare the useful. Resist, and we will leave none alive. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Sergeant Dana Carter adjusted her grip on the Titan rotary cannon, its massive frame humming with deadly potential. A weapon designed for war, built to tear through armor at 3,000 rounds per minute. Behind her, a handful of survivors huddled in the ruins of Fort Resolute. Wounded soldiers, engineers, a journalist clutching a broken camera. She could hear them breathing, hear the fear in the silence between the blasts. She wasn't afraid. Fear didn't change anything. Fear didn't stop monsters. "How long until the last transport's liftoff?" she asked, eyes locked on the horizon. A corporal wiped blood from his face. 15 minutes. Maybe less. Then we hold for 15 minutes. She cracked her knuckles, adjusting the targeting reticle. And if they want this planet, they'll have to dig through hell to get it. The first wave hit like a sledgehammer. Xiphos' drop pod slammed into the earth, the impact shaking the ground beneath her boots. The doors hissed open, unleashing towering reptilian warriors clad in obsidian armor. They moved with brutal efficiency, plasma rifles raised, blades gleaming in the firelight. Dana squeezed the trigger. The Titan roared to life, spitting lead faster than the eye could follow. The first row of Xiphos evaporated in a storm of metal, their armor crumpling like tin foil. Blood and shrapnel painted the battlefield as more rushed forward, undeterred. They thought they could overwhelm her. She gritted her teeth, adjusting her stance as the barrel glowed red-hot. Bodies piled up, limbs torn from torsos, but the Xiphos kept coming. Their shields flared against the onslaught, adapting, learning. A squad broke formation, advancing under the cover of heavy plasma fire. Dana ducked, feeling the heat of an explosion wash over her. Shrapnel bit into her arm, but she didn't flinch. "Flanking left," someone shouted. She pivoted, unloading another burst into the advancing warriors. The lead Xiphos took 3 rounds to the chest before finally dropping. The next kept coming. A plasma bolt seared past her head, close enough that she felt the burn on her cheek. She ignored it. The Titan's barrels whined from the strain, smoke curling from its vents. "Sergeant." A private shoved a fresh ammo belt onto the feed. "They're regrouping." She took a breath, checked her 6. The civilians were still moving, pushing toward the transports. Just a few more minutes. Then the ground trembled. The Xiphos were done playing games. A deep, guttural roar echoed to the ruins as something massive stepped forward, taller than any of the others, clad in reinforced plating, wielding a war axe that crackled with energy. The Xiphos' warlord had arrived, and he was smiling. The warlord strode to the carnage, stepping over the bodies of his own without care. His armor gleamed in the firelight, thick plates reinforced with a personal energy shield that shimmered as stray bullets struck it. The axe in his hand pulsed with plasma energy, each blade longer than a man's torso. He looked at the slaughter, then at Dana, and laughed. "You think your little gun changes anything?" His voice was deep, almost amused. "You think humans can stand against us?" Dana didn't answer. She leveled the Titan and pulled the trigger. The rotary cannon spat fire, rounds slamming into his shield, sparking on impact. The ground around him exploded in dust and shrapnel, but he didn't stop walking. His shield flared, absorbing the punishment. One step, another, closer. The Titan overheated, barrels glowing. The gun clicked empty. The warlord grinned. Pathetic. The plasma axe swung. Dana threw herself sideways as it tore through the barricade she'd been using for cover. Sparks and molten debris rained down as she rolled, grabbing her sidearm. A pistol wouldn't do a damn thing, but she wasn't dying on her knees. The Xiphos' forces surged forward. Plasma mortars crashed into the ruins, forcing the survivors to scatter. The barricades collapsed. The Titan gun was useless now, left behind in the wreckage. Dana ran, weaving through the debris as bolts of energy scorched the air behind her. A Marine was hit mid-sprint, his body vaporized in a flash of blue light. Another went down with a blade through his chest. The warlord wasn't even trying, just watching, enjoying the hunt. "You fight like cornered animals," he called out. "It is almost entertaining." Dana gritted her teeth. They were being driven back, pinned in a kill zone. There was no cover left, no escape. Think, a half-collapsed building to the right, a broken support beam hanging by a thread. An idea. She turned to the corporal beside her. "Demo charges. You still got them?" He nodded, panting. "Set them there. Now!" The warlord saw what she was doing and charged. Too late. The explosives detonated, the weakened structure crumbling in an avalanche of concrete and steel. It came down hard, burying the Zypho squad beneath tons of rubble. The dust settled. The warlord emerged. He was bleeding now, a deep gash across his face where shrapnel had found a weak spot. His shield flickered, destabilized but still active. His grin was gone. "You've made this personal." Dana spat blood. "Took you long enough." She wasn't done. They needed something bigger, smarter. She turned to the engineer, an older man who had been silent until now. "That old mech in the storage bay, does it still run?" He hesitated. "It's a scrapyard relic." "Can it fire?" A slow nod. "Then let's give them something to laugh about." The mech was ancient, a mining exosuit barely holding together, but its main cannon still worked. The engineer rigged the controls, rerouted power. The warlord stepped forward, axe raised to the kill. Dana fired. The blast tore through what was left of his shield, punching into his armor. He staggered, roaring in pain. For the first time, he wasn't laughing, and that was all Dana needed. Smoke curled from the warlord's armor, the blast leaving a molten crater in his chest plate. His breathing was ragged, but his grip on the plasma axe remained firm. He staggered but did not fall. His eyes burned with something new, hatred. "You will suffer for that," he growled. Dana didn't waste time. She grabbed a fresh rifle from a fallen Marine, knowing it wouldn't do much, but she wasn't about to go down unarmed. The warlord was wounded, vulnerable. That was enough. The Zyphos, however, had not lost their nerve. Even as their leader bled, they advanced with renewed fury. The battlefield turned into a frenzy of close-quarters combat. Plasma blades clashing against human steel, gunfire echoing between the ruined buildings. Dana's people were outnumbered, exhausted, and low on ammunition. One of the engineers took a shot to the leg, collapsing with a scream. A private was dragged into the shadows, his final cry cut short. Every second, the line shrank. The warlord swung his axe, carving through a barricade like it was paper. Dana barely dodged in time, feeling the heat of the plasma weapon singe her arm. She fired, point blank, aiming for the weakened armor near his wound. The bullet struck home, piercing through. He snarled but stayed standing. "You don't know when to die," he spat. "You first," she shot back. He lunged. She sidestepped, driving a combat knife between the plates of his armor. It sank in deep. His arm jerked, missing its mark, but the force of his swing still sent her crashing to the ground. The Titan gun lay in the rubble, useless. The mech had burned out its last shot. The explosives were spent. No more tricks, just survival. The warlord loomed over her, raising his axe for the final blow. Then he stopped. Dana followed his gaze. Past the burning vehicles, past the bodies, past the chaos. Toward the last of the evac ships, engines roaring as they prepared to launch. They had run out of time. The warlord bared his fangs. No one leaves. He turned from her, signaling to his remaining forces. Plasma cannons swiveled toward the escaping transports. If they fired now, hundreds would die. Dana forced herself up, body screaming in protest. No hesitation. No second chances. She sprinted through the rubble, grabbing a detonator from a fallen soldier. Her hand slammed down on the trigger. The ground erupted. Pre-planted charges, meant for structural demolition, now served a new purpose. The explosion engulfed the battlefield, a chain reaction of fire and debris consuming everything in its path. The Zyphos were caught in the blast, their formations breaking apart. The warlord turned just in time to see Dana emerge from the smoke, rifle raised. One shot, right between the eyes. His body hit the ground. The laughing had finally stopped. The warlord's body hit the ground with a heavy thud, his plasma axe slipping from his grasp. The battlefield fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the crackling of fires and the distant roar of the departing transports. The Xiphos who remained hesitated, their charge faltering. Their leader, the one who had promised them an effortless conquest, lay dead in the dirt. Dana didn't lower her weapon. Her body screamed for rest, but rest meant death. She stepped forward, boots crunching over shattered armor and blood-soaked debris. The Xiphos stared at her, their reptilian faces flickering with something they rarely felt. Uncertainty. "Go ahead," she rasped, wiping sweat and grime from her face. "Keep coming." No one moved. A younger Xiphos, barely more than a grunt, snarled and raised his weapon. His superior stopped him with a single, sharp gesture. The chain of command might have been shattered, but instinct remained. They were predators, but even predators knew when the hunt was lost. Then, one by one, they began to step back. Dana exhaled, shoulders sagging as the enemies slowly withdrew. They wouldn't forget this. They would return, but not today. Behind her, the last of the evac ships disappeared into the sky, leaving only those who had chosen to stay behind. Marines, engineers, the wounded, those who had fought with nothing left to lose. Someone touched her shoulder. She turned to see the corporal, his face streaked with soot, his expression unreadable. "You did it," he said. "No," she muttered. "We did." The words fell hollow. Victory had come, but what cost? The dead littered the ruins. Their sacrifice the only reason the colony had survived at all. The war wasn't over. The Xiphos would regroup, send another fleet, bring more weapons. But they wouldn't forget Hadrian IV. Dana knelt by the warlord's corpse, prying the insignia from his shattered armor. A trophy? No. A message. "Send us back to their high command," she said, tossing it to the corporal. "Let them know what happens when they come for us." The night stretched on, but for the first time in hours, no more plasma fire lit the sky. The battle was over. For now.